Okay, so just for those who don't know my spiel. Usually a short review is for the products that I don't like so much and the longer one for the ones that I like a lot. And the longer it gets, the more I like them. Which means make yourself comfortable because it might take a while. And I also know what it might sound like a cheap advertisement is the intro. It was just the one that I had stuck in my head of, well, thinking about how I should start the video. And here it is. Welcome to the next level of truly wireless earphones here with the Cambridge Audio Melomania 1. They cost around $130 and I know what you're gonna say. That's more than I would like to pay. Usually I know what my viewers want to pay and it's not that much, but if you want to reach that next level, particularly in terms of sound quality, well, or let's say like half a next step, because I also don't want to diminish anything that I've reviewed so far, this is the only one that fits that bill. And I'm not gonna try to convince you that you have to pay that much for good audio, but what I'm trying to tell you in this video is why I think it's worth the extra over what I've reviewed so far. That is, after all, a little bit cheaper. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and check what's in the box before that. We get the typical USB cable. Unfortunately, it's not USB-C, but just micro USB. But this cable I wouldn't use anyways because it's so short. We get the case, we get the earphones, and altogether 4 different sizes of ear tips. Even though we also have 2 different materials, because we have 3. So small, medium, and large with silicone, and ones out of foam. And whatever I'm gonna say in this review, judging the comfort and also the sound quality, it will be based on the big silicone ones. Because there is a, I would say, significant difference in terms of audio quality and also comfort when it comes to the foam ones. And I will get into that once we are there, which we are not, because now we are going to cover the case. This case I like a lot because it is so tiny. The only one that I have that is smaller is the one of the i10 that, yeah, is not comparable at all. And the only other competitor that comes even close, for example, is the Soundcore Liberty Air that after all is still bigger. Okay, yeah, unfortunately still micro USB, but the rest is very good. In terms of material, it's kind of a mixture between glossy and matte, but I like it. It attracts a bit fingerprints, but that is fine. We also get 5 different LEDs. When we open it up, it will stay open. We can then easily put in the headphones and those will connect and they will charge, the lights will appear, and this is definitely safe. Now, if you don't like black, because that's pretty much usually the only option that you have, they actually thought of that, because you get this package, you can buy this extra with 6 different covers, and for example now, put that in. And then you can actually, even though it is so small and you could put it in your pocket, just kind of stick it on somewhere. And I definitely like the solution because it gives some extra protection. Also still access to the port. So yeah, cool solution. I like it. I wouldn't personally use it, but I appreciate that extra level of, yeah, taking care of you. Otherwise, let's take them out. And well, now I'm gonna talk about the earphones themselves. Build quality, I like, it feels good. The design though is completely different to what I've had so far. One thing that I like a lot is that they are symmetrical. So you can use the left one, put it in the right ear or vice versa. This works. What I also like is that we have proper buttons, but ones that actually get activated super easily, almost too easy. But that is, in my opinion, the best solution, because usually people say I want capacitive because then I don't have to press them into my ear. But this is so easy to activate that you wouldn't really do it by accident. But if you do it, you won't press it too much further in your ear. So I'm good with that. We have left and right. Even though that doesn't even matter, you can see the light appear. That's whenever it's trying to connect or when it's charging. And now I have to get into one thing that is very important for you to know. This is the biggest driver that I've seen so far, at least the outer shell, and therefore no other tip that I've ever used or had here even remotely fits. So you will have to kind of use these. And now the difference between the two ones, silicone and also the foam one. The foam one is a little bit more secure in my ear, but what I don't like so much, whenever I have this foam in my ear and it kind of pushes outwards, I feel this constant push, so I don't like that so much. And even though it's weird that I actually in this case have to use the biggest ones, those fit in a little bit more comfortably after all and still secure enough, but they also have a big impact in terms of the sound. I will get into that later. The smaller ones that I usually use didn't work because then I didn't properly feel like they are inside, and even though I had a seal, it sounded very odd. So this is what it's all about. Now the controls work like this, and I have actually a suggestion towards Cambridge Audio if they would want to listen. Now, but here it is. Once pressing either one is for play and pause. Pressing twice on the right one is for the next track, and 2 times on the left one is for the last track. If you then long press each side, it is for volume. Then once if you pause the playback and then double tap, it is for the assistant. So that works really good if you have both in your ears. But here's my wish, Cambridge Audio, if you maybe are listening. If you could please do this. No matter which one I use, especially if I would want to use mono mode, which works so great here, I would want the controls to be like this. Double press is for the next track and the triple press is for the last track. Because this way I can control the media if I only have one in my ear. Because otherwise if I have the right one, I can only get to the next track or to the last one, so whichever I have. So I would be able to do more. And for the volume I have this suggestion. A long press, which already is for volume up in this case, but maybe a click and then a long press to lower the volume. Because this way, if you use this one in mono mode, which also works particularly good, I will get into that when we get to the controls, I could do all on one. But now, comfort-wise, let me put them in. And I know they maybe don't look particularly amazing. They look like plugs in your ear, but that's that. Now, like I said, the foam one, I felt a little bit odd. It was a little bit more secure in my ear, even though I wouldn't say that either one of these is really good for sport. Maybe like a little bit okay, but maybe in a limited way, because they don't feel super secure, especially on my weird left ear. They kinda tend to move outward, but they didn't really ever fall out. And in terms of comfort, if I just judge this based on my right ear, I would say it's not very good. It's definitely not great, but it's pretty good because I can have them in my ear. Don't really mind them. It's all good. But on my left ear, it once again feels a little bit odd. But the cool thing about these is since they are vice versable, or that's not a word, but since they're interchangeable and I could just do the other way around. What I also like is since they are circular, I can just twist them and it doesn't really matter. Because what I usually do, I put them in and then twist a little bit until I think they have the right spot, the right hook to it. And then they are secure enough for normal casual walking. And in terms of comfort, you always feel them. You can't pretty much forget them. But if you have normal ears, the comfort should be fine. That's just me being a little bit odd. But the isolation is also a little bit odd when I'm already talking about that, because you feel a little bit isolated, even though you hear the outside quite well. You also have some kind of bone conduction, because if you walk, if you have both in and not listening to anything, I have to admit, I have to kind of make that sure, then you hear the footsteps, you hear this pushing, and you hear this kind of bone conduction, and especially your own voice sounds very isolated and feels a little bit odd, but that's just something that I wanted to get out of the way. Now, let's get to the next thing. I've talked already about the controls and how I would change them, but I didn't talk about the codec yet. They support AAC, but also aptX. There was no visible delay, so you can watch videos without any issues. And aptX, after all, offers you better quality than AAC or SBC does. But the connection itself was absolutely stable, and usually whenever you take them out until you have them in, you get this really nice, and usually that's something that I don't mention, is the kind of woman that tells you Melomania, connected, disconnected, or whatever it says. I really liked it because it shows you a little bit more dedication to give you a good feel. Now, mono mode I really like, which means at one point one will be the master, and whenever you take them out it will connect to each other. But if you just then put one in, it will quickly disconnect and connect again, and then the one that you have is the master and vice versa, which means either one can be the master. This works very seamlessly. There is only a quick transition. You lose music for like 10 seconds. So in my opinion, this is at the moment the best possible thing we can do with the Android Sacra. I'm fully satisfied with that. And only, like I said, the controls that would allow me, especially since I mostly use it in mono mode, to control everything with just one, that would make it perfect. What is already pretty much perfect is the background noise, because there is not anything of that. Volume, not perfect, because in my opinion, for someone like me who listens super loud, they could be a little bit louder. So I max them out all the time if I had them in stereo mode, and it could have been even louder. For most people, I would say like 95% of all the people, it will be more than enough, and I'm still okay with that. I can live with the not quite volume that I want for that sound that I'm gonna get into in just a few seconds. Battery life is the odd thing, and I don't get how they achieved those values, because they claim 9 hours. And what I got in stereo mode is about 5 hours to 5 hours and 20, at best maybe 5 hours and 30. And even in mono mode, where I expected a lot more, I got maybe like a little bit over 6 hours. Because the odd thing is, when I had them in stereo mode and the one run dry after about 5 hours and 20, the other one continued playing for about 2.5 hours more. And therefore I expected more than 6 hours on one, so a little bit more. But it's still an above average value, and it's good enough to get you most of it since it charges pretty quickly anyway, so that's still fine. The mic quality, well, in case you want to hear it, here it is.
This is a microphone test of the Cambridge Audio Melomania 1 truly wireless earphones, just so you get a feel for it, how the person on the other end of the call would hear you. And compared to the ones that I've reviewed so far, I have to actually say that this one sounds quite clean, good enough. I mean, obviously, compared to a proper microphone, this doesn't come even close, but for a call here and there, I think this should actually be good enough.
Okay, so you've heard the microphone. I would say it's okay, it's good enough. Usually they don't really deliver a better experience. Anyways, I want to now finally get into the sound, and this will be fun for me since this is the most fun thing about this headphone. Not that the rest is bad, but particularly the sound was the one thing that lifts it above anything that I had so far. Starting with the imaging and also the sound stage. And I have to say here it makes a significantly better or delivers a better experience than all the other ones, since the soundstage itself isn't really wider, just a tad little bit, but it's the whole imaging and the soundstage that feels so kinda clean, coherent, and it just feels so right because you are kinda in a sound bubble and you can pretty easily track where everything sits in, and you can definitely notice this. And I had more than a few examples where I was actually kind of fooled by the music, thinking that there was something outside going on because it felt so real, whatever else was going on. Then the vocals, I would say that they slightly stand out, so they're kind of isolated just a little bit and kind of pushed a little bit forwards, so you can kind of put more emphasis on that if you like that in terms of listening. But it's really subtle, but just enough so that I like that. And there is also a little bit more dynamic going on. Now about the sound signature, I would say slightly boosted bass, but also just about as much boosted highs, with mid-tone not lacking anything. And this means a balance that I particularly like a lot. I think it's actually a little bit more kind of like mature or sophisticated than the general mainstream balance, but I think a lot of people will like that, especially if they want to kind of get into the next level of, I think, a little bit more something audiophile, because they are, after all, a little bit more neutral. I'm not gonna say flat or boring than the typical ones, because they are still a lot of fun, but they show you that there is more to music, a little bit more details and all these kind of things going on. It's not just the typical kind of mainstream truly wireless earphone. Well, and are they long-term friendly? Yes, absolutely. Now, about the bass, sub-bass isn't particularly impressive. It's there, it does a good, solid job, but it's not something that stands out at all. But it just does what it should do, good enough. Now, the presence of the bass I like a lot because it's very well integrated. It isn't too much in the background or too much in the foreground. It's just doing what it's supposed to do on a level that kinda enhances the overall sound. So I think the balance here was just done right. And for example, also the punch and so on. I think the bass is quite punchy and it has a lot of actual depth and is very well defined, which makes it noticeably more high quality than some other basses around. Maybe not quite as impressive, not quite as punchy, boomy or spectacular, but more of a, I would say, bass that is, I would almost say, on an audiophile level. Now, presence of the vocals, I like those a lot. They are very clean. The clarity is absolutely great. A nice, full, warm vocal range. And the sound has a lot of brilliance. It sounds very fresh and it sounds kind of airy for what it is obviously. And to the top in terms of treble, it goes quite up high. And it doesn't really roll off, but it also isn't really sibilant and so on. And I think actually they struck the right balance because they are a tad little bit trying to almost deliver some sort of sibilance, which I like because I don't like if it's cut off or rolled off too much and feels therefore kind of a little bit like dull. But this is actually where the other tips come in, because this is the biggest difference where you will notice the foam ones. Because if you have the foam ones in, I think this clear high end, this brilliance is kind of gone. I mean, mids and the bass usually stay intact, but when I had these in for 2 days, I found, well, they actually don't sound that impressive as they did before. They then sounded more like a Creative Outlier Air or something like the one more stylish TWS. But once you put in the silicone tips, in my opinion, you get that next level, because then you get a lot more details. The clarity was there, it felt a little more open. The whole soundstage widened up a little bit, and it was generally, in my opinion, just more pleasant to listen at, especially if you want something a little bit more neutral, a little bit more musical, if that's kind of the right word. And since we are talking already about music, which does it fit? I would say if it can do one thing spectacularly well, but that's just because it isn't meant for that at all, it's bass heavy music. Because bass sounds good, but that's not what it's tuned for, and therefore it just does a good way. But it stands way out more, for example, like ballads, classical music, but I also liked it so much for metal music, because especially metal, if you listen to older ones, they don't feel that fresh. They feel usually lower quality, a little bit more compressed and so on. And this, due to the clarity of these headphones with the silicone tips, it kind of gets this freshness back and feels kind of almost like remastered. I like that. It works just as well for rock and for pop anyways, since pop usually offers a lot of good quality. Now, competition, we have to get into these. So the ones that I'm gonna start with are the cheapest ones here, which are the Sabbath E12. They cost around $50, sometimes a little bit more. And well, how do they compare? They offer about 1.5 hours, or maybe at least 1 hour more battery life. In this case, they have wireless charging, they have USB-C, they have the bigger case, and I think they have the slightly better fit and a more maybe better working way they fit in your ear. For example, if I put them in, they look a little bit more subtle. In terms of secure fit, they're also a little bit better. So that, yeah, but in terms of sound, I mean, you won't get the codec, you only get AAC. You won't get quite the clarity of the sound, because the signature is similar enough, but this one just doesn't get quite the cleanness, and that isn't quite as clean. Okay, let's get into that. The next one would be those two. The one more, stylish TWS, and the Creative Outlier Air. And why those two together? Because these are very, very similar. Now, what they have in common, or how they compare with the Cambridge Audio, is like this. A little bit more battery life, so about an hour more. Better comfort, better fit, but the sound itself doesn't quite have the clarity, the brilliance, but they are also cheaper quite a bit. So that's that. In terms of codecs, both offer aptX and both offer a case. No, but this one has USB-C and this one doesn't have. And the last one, which I think in terms of sound signature is the closest one, but also in terms of price with around 100 euros, but I've seen for like $80 already in the US, are the Anchor Soundcore Liberty Air. Like I said already, pretty similar case. Pretty similar sound signature, but these ones, you just notice a more high quality, high end. Here it has this very same signature, but it's a little bit more shouty in comparison, but just a little bit, and it's not quite as clean, doesn't quite have the clarity in the upper hand. But I like this in terms of sound the most, even though they also don't offer, for example, aptX or something like that. Battery life is about the same. Comfort is noticeably better. The fit is a bit, I'd say, just about as secure. And that's that. So if I'm gonna tell you which order I would put them in terms of sound quality, it's absolutely the Cambridge Audio. Then I would say, even though not in terms of codec quality, in terms of sound, I prefer the Soundcore Liberty Air the most. Then the Creative and the one more stylish that are on, I would say, pretty much one level, but both offer aptX. And then last but not least, especially not far away, the noticeably cheaper Sabbath E12. And usually they offer some things, but watch those reviews to get into that. Now, let's get to the pros and cons of this one again. Super tiny case. The headphones themselves are pretty small, also symmetrical. That's something that I like. And since they're circular, you can put them in just the way you want to. You kind of don't have to have a particular way you have to put them in. Then, for this price, for this range, for this kind of headphone, a superb sound. And in terms of sound, it is one level above the rest, because there is just more detail going on. The sound's more coherent. The sound stage is just so much cleaner, so much well more established. And then the whole, it's better. Okay, then we also still get good battery life. But if I would have to point out a few things that I would like to have changed or be different, like I said, the controls, make them maybe a little bit more one or mono mode friendly, just because they have such a good mono mode. Then they could be a little bit louder. That's in brackets, because that's for me. And also, for example, in brackets is maybe the comfort for people who have smaller ears, because we have seen, actually, let me show you this. Let me take a typical one here. Take this one, as you can see how small this is. And now let's compare this side by side here, and you can see how much bigger this is. I mean, therefore, I think the driver should be also way bigger, and therefore the sound is so much, I'm not going to say bigger, but better. So that might have something to do with it. So the best part about this is might also have a little bit something to do negatively of an impact when it comes to the comfort. And then, for example, they are a little bit more expensive than the rest one. So they don't offer the best value. But if I, for example, think the next best one for me in general purpose use are the sound quality Air, here they are around 100 euros. 30 euros more for that sound. Yes. And the creative don't fit me so well, so they are out of the question for me, but will make a lot of people happy. The one more stylish TWS I think still is the kind of best all-rounder because it has the more secure fit, still a very good sound quality, can get pretty cheap these days with around $50-$60, so still a good solution, and even cheaper, at least sometimes, the 7E12 offers still a lot value as well. Yeah. Next point, for who are these? Well, where they are. Well, for everyone. No, but most particularly for someone who wants the best possible sound at a still affordable enough price. Because, I mean, there are other higher end ones that are even more expensive. But especially if I've listened to a Sennheiser 300 compared to these, I would actually prefer these in terms of sound. So... in case you want to know, how do they compare? So many people always ask me this. How do they compare with the Galaxy Buds? No, because I heard someone who had the Galaxy Buds in for review and then tried the Creative. He said the Creative are a lot better. Well, since I'm saying that the Cambridge Audio are, especially in terms of sound quality, quite a bit better than the Creative, I guess you have your answer. Okay, that was it. Until next time, bye.